Hello and welcome to week 11 in Introduction to Psychology. We have a couple chapters that we're going to be covering this week. The first is social psych, and then we're going to be looking at industrial organizational psych, IO psychology. Now for social psychology, it just so happens I'm teaching a whole class in social psychology right now, so it's hard just to pick out a few topics. But what we're going to be looking at, certainly I gave a whole section of the course book over to the work of Edward Bernays, and he's a nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he is quite famous for his work in advertising. And what I'm asking you to do, there's a whole statement that he makes about the power of advertising and how it manages and manipulates large populations of people. And it's both a testament to the power of advertising as we understand it, but it's also a little scary in terms of having that perception from the upper standpoint, and reflects, of course, sort of this. Freud was like that too. Freud was a lot of making grand gestures and professions like that. What do you think? I'm asking you to process that a little bit. Process that statement that he makes about the power of influencing people with advertising. The next part, I'm actually pull some stuff from my sociology class. We look at the fact that, just to give you a summary, we are individuals and we exist within groups in our society. And in those groups, we have statuses and roles. Now, in sociology, we refer to that as status as sort of the job title, and role is the job description. Now, we sometimes in our regular language, we talk about role to mean both of those things, but officially speaking, within sociology, we status, role. So I'm a teacher, and there's a job description I have. You're a student, and there's a job description for that. So I'm asking you to discuss in the quiz multiple statuses and roles that you have, because when you look at anybody, you have multiple statuses and multiple job descriptions. You're a son, a daughter, a brother, a friend, an athlete on the team. You're a musician, with a band. You're every one of those things complicates your identity through the social interactions and responsibilities you have within all these different groups. This, in a way, explains some of the stresses that we can experience when we have what in sociology we call them role strain and role conflict. Now, role strain is when I have multiple statuses and sometimes my job descriptions makes it difficult for me to manage those things all the time. I'm very busy. I have a lot of, like I'm preaching to you guys. You guys are all very busy. Then there's role conflict, and that's when it's one or the other. So let's say I'm a father and I'm also an employee. Now, what if I have a really big, important meeting that I need to be at, and my daughter has a softball game and really wants me to go, and it's one or the other? That's a role conflict. My status as a teacher and its role, job description, is to go to meetings. My status as a father, job description, go to the softball game, and I can't do both. That'd be a role conflict. It's very stressful. In the assignment, I'm actually asking you to look at one of my favorite theories of all time, and that is the theory of looking glass self. And I hope I've explained it pretty well in the course book. Essentially, it's an idea that there are people in our lives whom we turn to get evaluated about how well we're doing. Now, those individuals, I call them the Looking Glass Committee. As we enter adulthood, we are becoming more and more responsible for placing people on that committee. So often it's our parents, relatives, teachers, friends, and whatnot. We put them on that committee. Some of them were put on there for us, like our parents and stuff like that. Sometimes we can have people on there that are no longer with us. You could literally have a person on your committee who's not alive. You could even have, if you're religious, you could have a God or a spiritual person giving you advice on what you should and should not do. As we're growing older and we become more and more acclimated to the idea that I can select who's on that committee, we become more and more immune to the negative ways in which that committee can impact us. If there are negative people on your committee who are constantly putting you down or telling you you're worthless or something like that, you kind of have to fire them from the committee. That's more challenging to do when you're younger. It becomes easier later on. It also, the theory also asks you to understand how important it is to select carefully the individuals who you will place on that committee. In intimate relationships, one of the fields that I research into, in intimate relationships, we're actually looking for someone who's going to sit on that committee. That partner is an individual who we are going to turn to for honest advice about how we are doing, whatever, how we look, how we're acting, those kinds of things. Careful who you pick. So just one of the things I want, there's an essay about that. I want you to put together a description of your current Looking Glass Self Committee. When we go into IO psychology, it's a whole other field. It's actually, I got a second master's degree specific to this area. I would love to create a whole industrial organizational psych class. It's really fascinating stuff about productivity and motivations in the workplace and stuff like that. It's the application, essentially, of psychological principles within the workplace. Now, one of the theories of productivity and management is the behavioral engineering model. And I'm having you discuss how you could use the behavioral engineering model in problem solving with yourself. It's a model that is used by management, if they're aware of it, to diagnose where problems are in productivity. It could also be used in other groups. I mean, it could be used in a team situation, like a sporting team or a work team, or it could even be used in a family to identify, if things aren't going the way they should be, you can actually go through those 6 cells described in that model and come to a pretty good diagnosis as to where the issues are. Not only a diagnosis, but potentially a plan to fix the problem. So we're going to have a discussion about that. And then in the quiz, and I want to actually reiterate what's in the course book. The quiz asks about formal and informal work culture. Let me tell you what this is not. Formal and informal do not refer to the workplace itself, like one place, everything's loose and people can wear whatever they want, and you can drop the F-bomb at work, just like very loose culture kind of thing. And then you go to another place, like a bank or something, and everything is very formal. That's not what this is referring to. There are places like that. There are places that can be described as very informal and very formal. What I'm looking at right now is the informal and formal work cultures that exist in every organization. And what that means is this. The formal work culture is the policy manual. What is supposed to happen? That piece. And then the informal culture is information about the workplace that you would have to learn through social interaction. It's sort of like the inside information about how to be successful there. So let's say you work at McDonald's. Now, McDonald's has policies all over the place. It's a very, very structured workplace, how things are done and whatnot. But as you start working there, you might find out certain workarounds or certain people and their roles there, and don't talk to this person, or this person's going to be lazy because their parents own the place or something like that. Anything that you find out that's really kind of outside of that policy manual is what we refer to as the informal work culture of that place. And then with that, at the same time, you have the formal workplace culture identified in policies, people's statuses, their roles, who's the boss, or who's second in line, and all of that stuff, that official stuff. But then there's all that unofficial stuff that happens. Being successful in the workplace means having to navigate both of those worlds. They're simultaneous. They're happening at the same time. I work at KVCC, and there is a tremendous policy manual that runs the show, and there's all kinds of workarounds and relationships that exist between people that actually add to the flow of how things actually get done at KVCC. I'm sure that your school is the same way. So that will be our Chapter 12 and Chapter 13. Just to throw at you again, now that we're at the end of this particular week, I want to announce that next week we have no class. There's no responsibilities next week. We're going into the Thanksgiving week. And so use that time to get your information literacy paperwork done. That'd be a really great thing. I'm still going to be around. I don't disappear. I don't go to Paris. I don't do anything like that. I'm still around. And so reaching out to me is a good idea. And let's see if we can get those projects up and running. So that's what we have going on this week. I wish you a very good week, and I look forward to seeing you in the discussions. Take care.